The news of Diane Katon's passing on October 11, 2025, sent tremors through the film world. A beloved icon of American cinema, she departed quietly, having endured a long and private battle with illness. But what stunned the public even more than her death was the raw emotional response from Al Pacino, her on-screen partner of 15 years, and, as it turned out, the greatest love of her life. Upon hearing the news, Pacino reportedly wept in silence before uttering words that would echo across headlines. "I will regret for the rest of my life not marrying Diane. She was the greatest love of my life." He recalled a moment years earlier when Diane had given him an ultimatum, "Marry me or we break up." He chose to walk away. And now, that decision weighed on him like a stone he could never put down. Pacino did not attend the funeral. Instead, he chose to grieve in solitude, preserving her memory through quiet rituals. Old photographs, handwritten letters, small gifts exchanged over the years. Each keepsake, he said, reminded him that Diane had never truly left. The funeral itself was a scene of quiet heartbreak. Who came to say goodbye? What final tributes were offered to the woman who had shaped generations of filmgoers? Watch the video to witness the final farewell. If Diane Katon ever made you laugh, cry, or dream, remember to hit like and subscribe to keep her spirit alive. That morning in Los Angeles was gentle and clear. Sunlight filtered through tall trees, casting dappled shadows on the road leading to the mansion Diane Katon had long called her sanctuary. The house stood silent, wrapped in birdsong and breeze. But inside, that calm was shattered by something no one expected. At 8:08 a.m., emergency dispatch received a brief call. "Person down." No further details, just 3 cold, heavy words. Rescue 19 was dispatched immediately, unaware they were heading toward the home of one of America's most cherished film stars. When paramedics arrived, the iron gate was still closed. No signs of distress. A woman inside opened the door and led them through the quiet halls. Diane Katon was found motionless in a sunlit room. The same light she had used for reading scripts, writing in her journal, and dreaming up characters that would live forever on screen. Everything was in order. No signs of struggle. No fallen objects. Just silence. Thick, reverent silence. She was transported down the tree-lined street she had driven countless times. The ambulance moved slowly, as if honoring the fragile peace of the morning. Hours later, the world learned that Diane Katon had died at the age of 79. The news spread quickly, but the details of her final health condition remained private. Her family confirmed a sudden decline, but declined to share the cause. In the days that followed, journalists and fans began piecing together fragments of her final years, her candid interviews about battling skin cancer, her struggles with eating disorders, and the increasingly frail appearance that had worried many. But Diane Katon was never defined by illness. She was defined by grace, by wit, by the quiet power of her performances. And in her final moments, she left the world the way she had lived in it, on her own terms, surrounded by light, and remembered by those who truly knew her. The news of Diane Katon's passing on October 11, 2025, rippled through Hollywood with quiet devastation. Though the announcement came swiftly, the details surrounding her final health condition remained shrouded in privacy. Her family confirmed a sudden decline, but chose not to disclose the cause. In the days that followed, journalists and fans began piecing together fragments, her candid interviews about battling skin cancer, her struggles with eating disorders, and her increasingly frail appearance in recent years. Yet none of it pointed definitively to that final morning. Every detail remained elusive, like sunlight filtering through the olive trees outside her home. Brilliant, but fractured. Hollywood was shaken. Tributes poured in from those who had worked with Diane, from Woody Allen to Nancy Meyers. They remembered her signature smile, the fedora tilted just so, and the effortless poise that no one could imitate. But behind the praise lingered a quiet ache. Who first found her? Who made the call? Why did it all happen so quickly, so silently? No one had answers, only questions, and a growing sense of loss. We'll explore the illnesses that marked Diane's journey later. But first, we turn to the farewell, her funeral, where a legend was laid to rest. 3 days after her passing, on October 14, 2025, Diane's family gathered in a secluded seaside garden. Ancient olive trees swayed gently in the breeze, their leaves whispering like nature itself, keeping a promise Diane once wrote in her memoir. Her two adopted children, Dexter and Duke, chose this quiet corner far from the Hollywood spotlight, a place of peace, not performance. As the first guest stepped through the wrought iron gate, the air was heavy with wordless grief. Bette Midler, Diane's companion in laughter from the First Wives Club, arrived first, her gray scarf concealing tear-stained cheeks. She held Carol Bayer Sager's hand, whispering, she never pretended, never competed. She was simply Diane, with that mischievous smile. They sat in the front row beside simple white flowers, not roses, but sprigs of lavender from Diane's own garden, a symbol of the simplicity she always cherished. No grand orchestra played. Only an old piano softly echoed the melody from Annie Hall, music Diane once called the laughter of my soul. The heart of the ceremony was her family. Dexter, now 29, stood first. Her voice trembled, but her words were clear. Mom taught us that life is a comedy. Sometimes clumsy, sometimes painful, but always worth applauding. Duke, 25, sat beside her, eyes red, holding her hand. He spoke of afternoons filled with eccentric hats and laughter. Diane's golden retriever Reggie, always nearby. They didn't sob. They shared stories. How Diane adopted them at 50. How she filled their home with books, unfinished scripts, and warmth. This was her wish. Not a spectacle, but a space where love could be whispered without intrusion. Woody Allen arrived late, his pale face like someone stepping out of an old film. The man who created Annie Hall with Diane, the role that won her the 1978 Oscar, sat alone, a cigarette unlit in hand. When invited to speak, his voice was hoarse. Diane was the embodiment of creativity. She didn't act, she lived. With a self-deprecating humor only true geniuses possess. Those around him nodded, remembering the complex, inspiring bond they shared. Francis Ford Coppola entered with heavy steps, as if carrying the weight of the 1970s. He embraced Robert De Niro before sitting. Everything about Diane was creativity, Coppola said, his voice warm and steady. De Niro, eyes red, added, I'm deeply saddened. I cherished her, a kind woman in a chaotic world. They spoke of long nights on set, where Diane not only performed but uplifted everyone around her, turning tragedy into humanity. The air thickened with memory. It felt like watching a classic film one last time. Reese Witherspoon and Goldie Hawn arrived quietly, representing the next generation. They carried wildflowers from fields Diane once loved. Reese, whom Diane mentored as a teen during Wildflower, spoke with a choked voice. She changed how we see women on screen. Smart, funny, and completely original Goldie, with a sad smile, held Jane Fonda close, whispering about book club gatherings where Diane was always the center, her quirky fashion, her everyday stories, her warmth. Michael Douglas sat in the back row, his expression solemn. This is heartbreaking, he said. Diane was one of our greatest icons. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the ceremony shifted to a celebration of her legacy. A screen lit up with scenes from her most beloved films. Diane in Something's Got to Give, smiling beside Jack Nicholson. Diane in Father of the Bride, embracing Steve Martin like a true mother. Each clip was a reminder of her journey, from a girl in Santa Ana with Broadway dreams to a woman who redefined humor, resilience, and grace. Leonardo DiCaprio sat quietly, watching. He leaned toward a companion and whispered something that no microphone caught, but the look in his eyes said it all. Diane Katon didn't just leave behind a body of work. She left behind a feeling, a sense of possibility, of courage, of laughter in the face of fear. And as the final notes of the piano faded into the sea breeze, those gathered knew they had witnessed something rare. Not just the end of a life, but the echo of a legacy that would never fade. She was one of a kind, and I was honored to work beside her. There were no raucous songs at her farewell, only the soft, steady notes of a piano, guiding mourners into quiet reflection, where sorrow gently folded into gratitude. But among all who paid tribute to Diane Katon, one presence loomed largest in absence: Al Pacino. He was not just a longtime colleague, he was the great love of her life. When news of Diane's passing reached him, Pacino collapsed into a grief that close friends described as haunting, profound, and unlike anything they had seen in him before. Their story began in 1971 on the set of The Godfather, where Diane portrayed Kay Adams and Pacino became Michael Corleone. Their off-screen connection mirrored the intensity of their characters, passionate, complicated, unforgettable. Though their relationship eventually ended, it left a mark on Pacino that never faded. Now, that love has become a well of regret. Friends say he wept the moment he heard. His hands trembled as he gripped the phone, unable to process that the woman he had once loved so deeply, whose memory he had carried like a secret flame, was gone forever. He sat in silence for hours, eyes locked on old photographs spread across his table. Diane laughing between takes on set, candid smiles from quiet days in Santa Ana. He turned the pages of albums slowly, again and again, as if trying to hold time still. Pacino never released a public statement. Instead, those closest to him revealed the depth of his anguish and the weight of a decision he could never undo. Years ago, Diane had given him an ultimatum: marry me or we break up. He walked away. And now, in the stillness of her absence, he realized that moment had been the turning point of his life. If it's destiny, he was heard saying more than once, it's never too late for a second chance. But now, it was. His regret wasn't just personal, it was a tribute. Diane had brought balance to his life, a kind of peace he rarely spoke about but always felt. In past interviews and memoirs, Pacino had confessed, being with Diane was about comfort, a kind of comfort that lets you feel and think with the world. Now, those memories, her laughter, their long afternoons on set, the quiet, domestic moments, were all he had left. He did not attend her funeral. Friends explained that the pain was too great. He couldn't bring himself to cross the gate. He wanted to preserve her in his heart, untouched by ceremony or public mourning. He wanted her to remain exactly as he remembered: radiant, mischievous, open-hearted. In the days that followed, Pacino spent hours revisiting old photographs from The Godfather Part 2 and Part 3, where their love had deepened. A close friend said he seemed haunted, lost in the echoes of a love that had never truly ended. He opened one of her old notebooks, flipping through pages of handwritten scripts, blue ink notes, and everyday musings. On one page, he found a line that broke him: "Don't forget to smile, even when the world is against you." He wept. He still kept the silver bracelet Diane had given him for Christmas in 1975. Each time he held it, he said he could hear her voice, warm, teasing, unforgettable. At the 2017 AFI Lifetime Achievement Award ceremony honoring Diane, Pacino had stood before a crowd and said, "I will love you forever." At the time, it was a tribute. Now, it reads like a farewell, late but eternal. To Pacino, Diane was never just a co-star or a former flame. She was the great love of his life, an irreplaceable part of his soul. In his heart, she still lives, brilliant, indomitable, and whole, just as the world once saw her, just as he always did. Despite her luminous career, Diane's final years were marked by fragility. In the last months of her life, she faced a sudden and quiet decline that shocked even those closest to her. Her medical history included 2 long battles: skin cancer and bulimia, both of which she had spoken about with honesty and courage. But in the end, she chose privacy. She faced her final chapter with the same quiet strength that had defined her life. From the age of 21, Diane Katon lived with a quiet but persistent battle: basal cell carcinoma, a hereditary condition that had already touched her aunt, father, and brother. In 2014, she underwent 2 surgeries to remove squamous cell carcinoma from her cheek, a painful ordeal that transformed her into a fierce advocate for sun protection. "It's pursued me all my life," she once said, a truth that lingered in the minds of friends who later wondered if the long-term effects had contributed to her visible frailty in her final weeks. Her body had grown thin, her movements slower, her presence more delicate. Another chapter of pain came from within. As Carol Byers-Sager recalled after seeing Diane in Palm Springs, bulimia had once gripped her life with devastating force. It began in the 1970s, when the pressure to lose weight for the Broadway musical Hair pushed her into a cycle of uncontrollable eating and purging. Fried chicken, French fries, sweets, up to 20,000 calories a day, followed by purging. Diane called it an addiction and the lowest point of my life. Weekly therapy helped her recover, but she always considered herself a recovering addict. Though the disorder never publicly resurfaced, its psychological imprint remained, shaping her early years with isolation and self-doubt. Friends later speculated that this emotional residue may have left her more vulnerable as her health declined with age. The decline became unmistakable in the final months of 2025. Carol Bayer-Sager, who visited Diane after the January wildfires in Palm Springs, was stunned by her appearance. She was still smiling, still witty, Carol said, but she looked so frail. Others noticed subtle changes. She had stopped her beloved daily walks with her golden retriever, Reggie. Her final Instagram post, just weeks before her passing, showed her seated quietly, the light in her eyes dimmer but still present. An anonymous friend shared, "Diane didn't want anyone making a fuss. She kept it private, like she didn't want us to worry." Fans began noticing signs, rare public appearances, a pale and exhausted look, and a surprising decision to sell her beloved Los Angeles home for $29 million in March 2025. That house, where she had lived since 2017 and written about in her book, symbolized her love for architecture and family. She always said she'd live there forever with Dexter and Duke, a close friend recalled. The sale, paired with her retreat from the public eye, suggested that Diane may have sensed her body weakening and chose to face it alone. On the morning of October 11, 2025, the Los Angeles Fire Department was called to her home at 8:08 a.m. for emergency medical assistance. She was transported to the hospital, but did not survive. Diane Katon passed away at the age of 79. Her death left a profound void in the hearts of fans and the film industry. Her legacy endures through her iconic roles and her quiet, tireless contributions to the arts. For years, people wondered why Diane never married, despite passionate relationships with men like Woody Allen and Warren Beatty. But it was her nearly 15-year love affair with Al Pacino that left the deepest mark. A love so intense and unresolved that it seemed to shape her decision to remain single. That relationship became the unfinished melody of her life, echoing through stories and memories. They met in 1971 on the set of The Godfather, where Diane, a rising Broadway star, played Kay Adams, the patient wife of Michael Corleone, portrayed by Pacino. From the first glance, Diane was captivated. "He had crazy beauty," she once said, "explosive energy. Like fire." Their connection deepened during the filming of The Godfather Part 2 in 1974, when they found harmony in art and ambition. They strolled the streets of New York hand in hand, as if Hollywood were merely a backdrop to their own love story. Their relationship spanned the 1970s and 1980s, a passionate tango of breakups and reconciliations, like scenes reshot in search of perfection. Diane loved Pacino with an open heart, laughing at his jokes, listening to him analyze Shakespeare in quiet moments. Pacino, with his free-spirited nature and career obsessions, brought both joy and pain. "He's a lost genius," Diane once wrote in an unpublished letter, "and I wanted to be his guide." But that freedom came with a cost. Diane yearned for something Pacino couldn't give, a permanent promise. She dreamed of a family, a home filled with children's laughter, a place where she could be herself without the stage or spotlight. In 2017, she shared that dream publicly, hoping Pacino would help build it. But he remained tethered to his career and unbound lifestyle. On quiet evenings by the fireplace, Diane would hold his hand and ask about the future. He offered hugs and vague reassurances. "He loves me, I know," she confided to a friend, "but he can belong to no one." Those moments etched themselves into her heart like a sweet wound that never healed. The climax of their love came during the filming of The Godfather Part 3 in 1990. Reunited as Michael and Kay, the set was charged with emotion. Diane felt as if she were reliving their love. She hoped it would be the turning point. She gave him an ultimatum: "Marry me, or we break up." He walked away. And now, in the twilight of her life, that love remained unfinished. A melody unresolved. A story that never found its final scene. Al Pacino, though deeply pained, chose to walk away. "I was too young, too busy with work," he later confessed to a close friend, as reported by the Daily Mail. Diane Katon, with a heart both broken and resilient, made the decision to end their relationship. "I loved him completely, and that was all I had," she wrote in her diary. a line revealed by friends after her passing. Their breakup in 1990 marked more than the end of a love affair. It was the moment that shaped Diane's decision to remain single for the rest of her life. After Pacino, she never fully opened her heart again. Though she had brief relationships and received proposals from other men, she always declined. "I loved Al with all my heart, and no one can fill that void," she once confided to a friend. Their love, though passionate, left behind not bitterness, but a haunting sense of having given everything and received an incomplete dream. It made her wary of commitment, afraid that no other love could ever match those years. Instead of marriage, Diane found solace in motherhood. At age 50, she adopted 2 children, Dexter and Duke, and transformed her home into a sanctuary filled with books, films, and laughter. "I don't need a man to feel complete. I have my children, and that's my greatest love," she said in a 2019 interview with The Guardian. Yet those closest to her knew she still carried Pacino's shadow, not with regret, but as a beautiful, bittersweet memory. Her wide-brimmed hats, quirky outfits, and the way she laughed when recounting stories from The Godfather all carried echoes of those days. Upon her passing, Diane left behind an estate estimated at over $100 million. Her wealth stemmed from a career built on iconic roles, The Godfather, Annie Hall, which earned her the 1977 Oscar, Something's Got to Give, and from her savvy investments in real estate. She was known as a high-end house flipper in Los Angeles, with a keen eye for architecture and design. One standout example was her Brentwood home, purchased in 2009 for $4.7 million and renovated into an architectural gem. She listed it for $28.9 million in March 2025, just months before her death. Other notable transactions included properties in Beverly Hills and Pacific Palisades, including a home sold to Madonna in 1997 for $6.5 million. Each showcasing Diane's unique taste and business acumen. Her portfolio was diverse: cash, stocks, art, photography, and antique furniture. Despite her success, she lived modestly, avoiding extravagance. She was described as a meticulous asset manager supported by trusted legal advisors. There were no reports of debt or financial disputes. In the late 1990s and early 2000s, shortly after adopting Dexter and Duke, she established a family trust to ensure her estate would be distributed privately and thoughtfully, just as she had always lived. Most of her estate was dedicated to her children, whom she called the greatest love of my life. Dexter, a veterinary technology graduate, lives a quiet life and shared heartfelt memories of his mother on social media. Duke, a musician, pursued his passion with Diane's unwavering support. Beyond family, Diane allocated a portion of her estate to charitable causes close to her heart. Her funeral was held in a solemn, intimate setting, attended by family, close friends, and several well-known colleagues. The space was filled with fresh flowers, quiet condolences, and stories of her humor, charm, and resilience. Colleagues paid tribute to her enormous cinematic legacy and her enduring impact on American arts. Al Pacino, her longtime lover, spoke with quiet reverence. "She was the only one I ever wanted to marry," he said. His words, simple and raw, echoed through the room like a final love letter. Diane Katon was a woman of strength and vulnerability, an icon of art and character. Her life was a tapestry of brilliance, heartbreak, reinvention, and grace. She gave the world unforgettable performances and gave her heart to those who mattered most. If this story moved you or sparked curiosity, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss another deep dive into the lives of the stars who shaped history. We'll keep bringing you the stories behind the spotlight, the ones you've never heard, but won't forget. And now, we want to hear from you. Drop your thoughts in the comments below.